Okay, so let's get started on our new shawl design that I've created for you. It's very simple, it's very easy. The first couple of stitches might drive you a little crazy, but after that it'll be really easy and it moves really quickly. So we're going to do a magic circle. And then in that circle we're just going to do our first puff stitch, which is going to be 4 loops pulled through. So we'll yarn over. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now this one can be a little hard to pull through, so just make sure you hit all your loops, even if you got to go one at a time to get them through there, so you don't grab your yarn. There you have it. There's your first puff stitch. Close it with 1 chain. Tighten up your magic circle, but not all the way. Leave it a little bit loose right there for now. We're not going to chain, we're going to turn our work. And in the top of that puff stitch we just made, there's the little chain there. So we're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull through 4 loops of it for a puff stitch. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pull, yarn over, pull through all the loops, and do 1 chain. Go to the next, yarn over, we're going to put another puff stitch in the very same place we just did that puff stitch. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pull it through, close it with a chain. Turn your work. In the first puff stitch, we're going to yarn over, and this is where our edge will start. And you'll always, in this first one and the last one, you'll always put it in the top chain of the stitch here. You see there? This little chain right here in the back. We're going to go right through there and pull in our puff stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4. Close your puff stitch with 1 chain. And now we're in between the 2 puff stitches. So we're going to do a puff stitch in that space. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Close it with a chain. And then when you see we're at the last puff stitch, which is our second puff stitch on the second row, and there's the little chain right there in the back. So we're going to yarn over, go through that chain, do our puff stitch. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Close our puff stitch, pull through all the loops. Close it with a chain. And now you have 1, 2, and 3 on that row. Now we're going to pull our magic circle tighter, so to close in our first puff stitch, like so. Then we're going to turn our work. And like I said, we're going to yarn over, and in that top chain on the puff stitch of the first one, that's where we're going to do our puff stitch, and that creates our edge on both sides. And when we get to the end, we'll do it in this chain back here on that puff stitch. So we're going to do our puff stitch in that chain on top of the very first puff stitch. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Close our puff stitch with 1 chain, move to the next. Now we're going to put a puff stitch in between these 2 puff stitches here, in this space here. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, and 4. Close your puff stitch with 1 chain. We'll go in between these 2 puff stitches and put another puff stitch. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Close your puff stitch with a chain. Now we're going to do our final puff stitch on this row in this chain back here in the back. You see it's right there in the back. Go into it. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Close it with a chain. Now we have 4 in that row, and you see we're already building up our little shawl. And so you'll just do this over and over again until you reach the size that you want. And I'm going to keep doing it with you. So we're going to turn, yarn over, and the chain on top of the first puff stitch. We're going to do our first puff stitch. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pull through, close the puff stitch. Go in between the next 2 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pull through all your loops, close your puff stitch with a chain. Yarn over, we're going to go in between the next 2 puff stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pull through all the loops, close your puff stitch. Now we're going to go in between the next 2 puff stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pull through all your loops. Close it with a chain. Now we're going to do our final puff stitch as we always do to create our edge on the side, because it turns the stitch a little bit, so it makes it look a little different. We're going to go into the back chain of that last puff stitch on the top, pull in our puff stitch. 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's a very easy pattern to do, and once you get it locked into your brain, you'll be like, oh my god, this is so easy, I love it. And it's so much fun to do, and it, you know, there's really one row repeat, if you want to say that. You just keep doing the same thing over and over. So you turn, and we're always going to do our edge stitch in that very top chain right here on the top of the puff stitch. Whereas we will always, when we go across the row, we will put our puff stitches in between each puff stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the next row we'll put 1 here, that will be 1. Then there will be 2, 3, 4, and 5 in between this, and 6 on the end. And every time you'll be adding stitches, and it'll be growing right in front of your eyes. And you can switch color threads if you want to do that. You can do patterns with different colors by, you know, do diamond shapes or stars or whatever you want to do with the puffs. But if you tend to get frustrated working puff stitches like this, I recommend that you do a small sample size. And even if you have to rip it out, it doesn't matter. You just keep doing it and you'll just be really good at it. So we're going to yarn over, put in our first puff stitch. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Close our puff stitch with a chain, go into in between the 2 puff stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Close your puff stitch with a chain. Go and yarn over, go in between the next 2 puff stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pull through all your loops. Close it with a chain. The next one, yarn over. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now I think you've probably got the dynamics of the stitches and the pattern. So now we're on the end. Yarn over, we're going to do our last puff stitch in this chop chain here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yarn over, pull through all your loops, close your puff with a chain. And here's where we are to this point, you see, and it's growing. We started with 1 in our magic circle, and we'll just leave this tail for now. And we started with 1, then we had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it'll be 7, 8, 9, 10, and it'll just grow and grow and get as large as you want it to do. And then after we finish and we get to the end of how big we want it to be, I'm going to show you how to do a really pretty edge on the top. I initially thought about doing it down the side, but then as I looked at the pattern, I really like the way this edges out on the side because it turns the puff stitch a little more sideways at an angle, where these are more straight up and down and slanted a little bit in different ways. So I'm going to do an edging on the top in probably a burgundy sparkle color, and I'll show you how to do that when we finish up. So let's just keep on going, and I'm going to get back on the piece I was working on now that I've got you started. And you just keep going until you reach the size that you want to make your piece. If you want it really long, you can make it really long. If you want it shorter, you can make it shorter. So just watch. I'm going in between the puff stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yarn over, pull through all the stitches, close it with a chain. And you see they'll be more spacey as you move up from the bottom. They're a little tighter weaved, and then as you get up, it'll start opening up, and the spaces in between the puff stitches will be a lot more visible to you, and this is what you'll be doing. And then you'll get the pretty edging as you go up the side. Always doing it in the top, that chain that's right on top. So we're going to yarn over, go in between the 2 puff stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm also, I didn't tell you in the beginning, I probably should have. You can use, I'm using a size J with 4-ply medium weight yarn. You can use whatever yarn you like. You can use whatever size hook you like. You know, it'll just change how large your pattern is, but I wanted you to be able to see really well what I'm doing. So that's why I'm using the J. Yarn over, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yarn over, pull through all your loops, close your puff with a chain. 1, 2, 3, and 4. You know, I used to not like to do puff stitches at all. 1, because they just used to drive me crazy, but I'd love to do them now. 2, because honestly, they do eat up a lot of yarn, but they're really pretty. So there's a compromise with everything, I guess, right? So let's see here. We're yarning over, we're going in between the 2 puff stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Close your puff stitch. And you see it's the same exact thing that we were doing here on this piece here. The same thing we were doing here is what we're doing here, and as you see they open up a little bit more in there as you go up the piece. I can show you on this little small piece again if that makes you more comfortable. We're going to yarn over, go in the first chain on the top of that puff stitch. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Close your puff stitch. Go in between the next 2 puff stitches here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Close your puff stitch with a chain, and you just keep going, Yarn over, go in between the 2 puff stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yarn over, go through all the loops, yarn over, chain 1, and just complete your row across as we're doing. And the stitches open up more and more as you go. You see now they're open, and I'm only up to what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows already. So about row 6 and 7 is when they really start to open up nicely for you. And then we just continue right on across, and it's just so much fun to do. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can make them really quick if you want to give some for gifts. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yarn over, pull through all the loops, close it with a chain. It's a very simple puff stitch pattern. I've created it for you, and I hope you really enjoy doing it. And I'm going to continue doing mine, and then we will reach the end, and I will show you how to put that beautiful edging on that I'm probably going to do in a burgundy color, a deep burgundy red color that has the same sparkle as this, because it's really pretty together. And I don't know if you saw the other video where I was Tunisian crocheting the sweater that was this color in the burgundy. It's very beautiful. It turned out really well. I didn't do a video of it because I was making it for a client. So yeah. So keep on going, and I will come back to you when we get a little bit bigger on our shawl, and we will do the edging on the top. So enjoy. I think you're really going to like this pattern. You can rewind it as much as you need to, pause it, stop it, and look at it and figure it out. You could probably even figure out that magic circle if you don't know how from me doing it, because it's not that difficult. They used to drive me crazy, but they don't anymore. So enjoy it, and I'll be back with you when we get to the point of fixing our trim on the top. Okay, so I've been working on my shawl pattern. I don't know where you are in yours, but I've come to my last row. So how I'm going to start my last row. There's our puff stitch under the top of the first puff stitch. A little chain there. Of course, we're going in between the puff stitches. Close it off with the chain. You should be really good at puff stitches by now. And I'm going to go all the way across to the end of my row. And when I get to the end of the row, I'll come back and show you what we're going to do to finish off our edging. Okay, so I've made it to the end of my row. And now we're not going to do a chain. Just going to turn our work. Oh, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of fabric. We're going to turn our work. Well, actually, no, we're not going to turn our work. Sorry, because we're going to do a... So instead of turning our work like we would normally do, sorry about that, I've decided that what I want to do is a reverse crochet. Also, I've heard people refer to it as a crab stitch. I tend to call it a reverse crochet because crab stitch just sounds a little icky to me. So, also, I was taught not to do the first stitch, to chain, but not do the first stitch, but that's not how I do it, of course. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain one, because we're going back this way where we would be flipping our work and, you know, going on the other side. So we're going to stay here. I do a chain one, and then that first stitch right there, right here, on top of this puff stitch, we're going to go to the very first stitch. It's hard to get in, but do it. The first chain on top of the puff stitch, yarn over, pull through both loops underneath like that, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, go into the next one, pull through your yarn, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, go through the next chain, pull through, yarn over, pull through both loops. It's a reverse crochet. I'm not teaching a reverse crochet, but that's what I'm doing, so I'm trying to show you the steps. So we're going to go into the next top of the stitch, into the front loop of the chain. We're doing it only in the front loop of the chain. Pull through your yarn through both of those loops around the little twist. Yarn over, pull through. We're going to go into the next chain, the front loop only. Grab your yarn, pull it through. It takes a little while to get used to this if you haven't done it before, but it's really very easy once you get going. It just seems a little weird at first, and it makes a beautiful sort of a rope looking stitch across there. And then the reason we're doing it only in the front part of the stitch, you know, the front loop here, is because we're going to be doing a single crochet in the back stitch. So we'll do that all the way across. The reverse crochet. And don't pull your yarn as tight as you're used to pulling it if you hold tight tension. I tend to not hold a tight tension, but if you do, you're going to have to loosen up because you don't want these stitches to be really pulled tight. You want it to have a sort of a looseness to it so that you get a pretty rope effect across there. Otherwise, they'll just be way too tight. But you see, I'm not holding much tension at all. I'm just gliding through there. Go through the front loop of the stitch, just grab your yarn, pull, twist under both loops, turn it around, pull through. And there's what we're doing all the way across. We're making this beautiful rope stitch here. And we're going to do this all the way across to the end, and when you get to the last stitch, I'll show you what we're going to do there. Because I also don't do that traditionally either. It's very easy to drop a stitch here. That's okay. It's not the end of the world. You'll pick it up. But that loose tension is very important for pulling that through, because it's sort of like a little twist that you do in there. Like when you pull it through, you go under both of those stitches, and when you pull up, it just automatically does that little twist. It's not really something that you have to do, it does it itself. Like that. And this is what we're doing. So you just work all the way to the end, and I'll meet you in the last stitch and show you what we're going to do there. Okay, so I'm coming to the end of my row of reverse crochet. I'll just finish it up here. And make sure you try not to miss any stitches. And you're always doing this in the front loop of the stitch. I'm going all the way to the end there. Pull that through. Okay. Now, some people will tell you to chain here. I'm not going to tell you that. We're not going to chain here. We're just going to go into the back of this row, and I hope you can see this. The row that we just did, the reverse crochet, gives us like this really pretty roping effect. And now we're going to crochet in the very back of it in this particular part of the stitch here. That part. That part. Okay? So, we're going to go into the very first one and do a single crochet. The next one, single crochet. Single crochet. It's the bar in the back. You'll see it immediately. It's right there. Just pick it up and do your single crochets in that bar that's right back there on the back of the row of this little rope stitch we just did, or crab stitch, or reverse crochet they call it. And see what that does is pops our little rope stitch a little more forward and puts a really pretty finishing change on your edge. So let's keep doing that. Just single crochet all the way across to the end in that back stitch. It's usually pretty easy to see that in the back. And you see, that's what we're doing. It's pushing it forward and giving it a really beautiful edge there, with a finished little chain across. And if you want to, with your shawls, any of them really, you can make a little tassel and put on the bottom to hang down. or something like that. And when you're doing the back, what you're actually doing is, remember in the front, I said always do it in the front loop of the stitch. So basically what we're doing now is we're going behind that and we're doing the single crochet in the back loop of that same stitch. That's why we only did it in the front, so that the back loop would be available for our single crochets. It's a very easy pattern. I was actually making something else when I decided to do this pattern. I thought, oh, well, this would be good for, you know, beginning crocheters. And it's not frustrating. You're learning a lot of new things. I think that's always a good thing. Okay, so I'm coming up to the end of my row of my single crochets in my back loop, down to the last couple of stitches. And you can make your shawl as big as you want to make it, as small as you want to make it. And I'm going to push into that last one, cut my yarn, and we're done. And you've made a beautiful shawl. And it's also reversible as well. Now I'm just going to run this in here and pull this thread through. So that it disappears. And see, we have a beautiful edge there. And the good thing about the shawls, it's reversible because it's basically the same on both sides except for the top edge. And you could make that reversible if you wanted to. So here's our beautiful shawl. Pattern, and it's very simple. It's great for beginners. You'll see my rig, but at least you'll be able to see the shawl. It's really beautiful. That's what it looks like on the inside. And if you wanted to put a tassel on the bottom, you could do that as well. Here's what it looks like at the bottom. And you'll just get rid of your little string at the bottom. And there you have it, a beautiful shawl. I wanted to just do a little additional video so you could see it when it was laying all the way outstretched. So you can see what you're making. So it's really beautiful shawl. And it comes right down to the little point. And the beautiful border with the rope stitch or the crab stitch is called reverse crochet. And then the little chain on the back gives you a beautiful edging. And there's the reverse side. So if we take it, turn it around. Sorry for the camera work. And there's your beautiful shawl.